What a strange, explosive year it's been for movies. 2015 in mainstream cinema was the usual string of franchise building and vehicles for the comedian du jour, and there were some flashes of brilliance in the blockbusters, but the most innovative, daring things were happening in really unexpected places. From unexpected filmmakers, countries, genres, even mediums. Now, this is an unranked list. Any sort of order I put them in would be arbitrary, and that includes order of subjective quality, so here are 20 films from 2015 worth the watch, ranked in the order in which I want to talk about them. This love story between two women, Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara, doing some career-best work, feels achingly modern, fighting against prejudices that still run through society, and yet it's built the stuff of film classics. The romance and narrative structure has echoes of Brief Encounter. There's at least one scene with blocking lifted from Hitchcock, but this is all Todd Haynes, a director with a proud history of pushing social boundaries within classic forms. It's especially timely considering this year's long overdue legalization of marriage equality, and by adapting a 60-year-old novel within beautiful cinematic traditions, Haynes makes it timeless. In a less covered movie about a lesbian relationship, a young ingenue is taken under the care of a strict older woman whose desires are unconventional. Okay, this movie came out within a week or two of that other movie about BDSM, and it managed to portray it in a way infinitely more humanely, more humorously, more honestly than 50 Shades ever could. And it does it simply by popping the bubble. Peter Strickland shoots in the style of a 1970s softcore porn flick, and like his last film, takes the time to deconstruct exploitation cinema and get into the absurd, often embarrassing reality of maintaining a kinky relationship. All done without objectifying or shaming anyone. There isn't even any nudity. I think this is what sex positivity looks like. No, scratch that. This is what sex positivity looks like. Everything around this movie suggested that it would be a dumber retread of Steven Soderbergh's Magic Mike, which itself felt like a retread of similar ideas he explored in The Girlfriend Experience, and the whole enterprise felt like a slow, inevitable decline into cheap exploitation, like a gender-flipped Showgirls. But the result wasn't just refreshing, it's radical. It manages to chisel out a new space for 21st century masculinity. One accepting of female desires, unafraid of bending gender roles, proud but not belittling, sexy but not sexist. So good on you, you dumb, brilliant skin flick. And now, sex negativity. I'm usually not one for horror films, so this retro throwback to classic Wes Craven wasn't something I expected to be on my radar, but It Follows surprised me by how beautifully simple its premise is. It manages to find something scary in the simple act of slowly walking towards the camera. Never have I spent so much time scanning the background for extras. I've heard plenty of sound readings that suggest the monster serves as a metaphor for living with an STD, but a friend of mine once gave an interesting alternative. It's about the anxiety felt with the onset of sexual maturity. That once you've reached the point where you can create life, you're faced with an increased cognizance of your own mortality. It's not some sex is evil Puritan morality play, it's the unspoken anxiety of an adult life. This movie managed to movie harder than any other movie movied this year. Maddin and his co-director Evan Johnson scoured film history to find lost films, lost because of degradation or censorship, and recreated them. The narrative weaves in and out of various plot lines. The story of a Canadian mountain man, a volcano that feeds on tapioca, a subplot where Udo Kier gets brain surgery to have him stop thinking about butts. It's the best kind of insanity. Those stories, told through the filter of film and digital artifacting processes, makes it feel like the amalgamated ghost of dead films returning to haunt us. Haunt us with flapjacks and Filipino banana vampires, but still. By contrast, this is one of the most bare-bones, uncinematic films I've seen all year. Cold, white office rooms, drab shirt and khakis costuming, basic blocking, minimalist camera work. This is as sparse a film as one can have. And yet, it's riveting. Tom McCarthy's docudrama about the Boston Globe's Spotlight team and their efforts to break the 2002 sexual abuse scandal within the Catholic Church doesn't need flash. It simply has facts. The main cast is stellar. They embody the team with a shocked urgency that pushes the story forward, even though part of what makes them compelling is the struggle to hold the story back. The heroic act here is sitting on a story until they have all the facts line up. Bare-bones filmmaking never felt more necessary. Though after seeing Tangerine, it might not be fair to call Spotlight bare-bones. This was scraped together for a measly $100,000 with first-time actors and, would you believe, shot on an iPhone 5. And look at the results. Outfitted with an anamorphic lens and heavily color-corrected in post, amateur actors and a trap soundtrack sourced through Spotify, Tangerine could very well be the future of indie filmmaking. Director Sean Baker cited Dogma 95 as an influence, though I don't think Dogma was ever this exciting, or funny, or even progressive. It's notable for having 2 transgender leads and a story about some of the most marginalized parts of Hollywood. It doesn't shy away from the worst parts of their lives. We see heartbreak, stigmatization, even outright abuse. But it also gives them a sense of humor, flawed personalities, broken dreams. Well, it makes them human. Best thing any film can do. Wow, Richard Linklater got the Boyhood sequel out fast. That joke is old. Director Céline Scamma didn't follow her leads for 12 years, but Girlhood is also about a child coming of age, and unlike Boyhood, it's in a far more interesting setting than white American suburbia. Scamma isn't the child of West African immigrants to Paris, as her subjects are, so this could have easily become exploitative and condescending, but it never feels like that. The lead, Mariam, played beautifully by Khadija Touré, isn't an object of pity or scorn, but a headstrong, tough, but caring leading role. She's everyone who ever had to grow up in a tough environment, and film is richer for knowing her. Also, best use of Rihanna in a movie ever. Yes, I put the Shakespeare adaptation on this list. I'm predictable. Justin Kurzel's work shows an understanding of the text that in other hands could have been a facile costume drama, but here it's shot with the visceral gravitas of Zack Snyder. Though a Zack Snyder with maturity and perspective and empathy. Kurzel swipes Snyder's slow-to-fast motion ramping, but here it's essential to the story. You feel each death. You sense the toll of the battlefield. You're shown the misty environment that shaped Lord and Lady Macbeth, and creates a living, bleeding, burning world. I can only hope he can keep that level of cinematic cognizance when he gets to his next project, Assassin's Creed. Hoo boy. This is less of a movie than a long setup for one of the most elegant punches to the gut in recent cinematic memory. German director Christian Petzold's post-Holocaust drama owes a lot thematically to Hitchcock's Vertigo. It's also about a man who finds a woman who reminds him of a deceased lover, then forces her to play the part of the deceased, without realizing that she really is his lover back from the dead. Petzold makes 2 major innovations on that premise. First, and most importantly, it's told from her perspective, not his. It's not about a man perversely trying to shape someone into his beloved. It's the tragedy of a woman whose husband can only see what he wants her to be, and not what she is. Second, it's set after the Holocaust. The woman escaped from a Nazi concentration camp with a new face, and her husband was the one who likely gave her up to the Nazis. Hell of a pitch. It's simply shot, sharply acted, and one of the most complex psychological thrillers of the year. Another Holocaust film, but this... oh man. This is one of the hardest watches of the year. But to be anything else than visceral is a disservice to the memory of the Holocaust. Son of Saul follows Saul Auslander. Quite often literally, the camera follows him from the back in close-up, as he works to bury the body of a boy who may be his son, though he likely isn't. He focuses on this task to distract himself from the horrors that surround him, horrors that he's forced to commit, and horrors that we only see in the margins of the frame. The choice to shoot Saul entirely in close-up shows both how close he is to the atrocity and how much he has to distance himself from it. Geza Rohrig, who plays Saul, described his character as God's last witness, as someone devoted to the idea that it's possible to do more than simply survive. A man trying to do a human act in a place far from humanity. It's soul-draining but essential viewing. If you do see Son of Saul, don't watch this right afterwards. This is a film that almost sounds made up. Ukrainian director Myroslav Slaboshpytskiy, which I'm sorry I mispronounced right there, shot a film entirely in sign language, without subtitles. It so easily could have been a gimmick. The lack of subtitles emphasize how isolated these kids are, how their disconnection has driven them to extremes. And the cinematic effect of that, in a film without a score or without dialogue, every hit, every slap, every scream rings out even harder. As order breaks down and the crimes mount, Slaboshpytskiy forces you to watch. It's an unrelenting barrage of misery done in a shockingly creative way. God, I need a comedy on my list. Let's see, what made me laugh? Yeah. So I'll admit that I'm a terrible cinephile. I haven't seen Roy Andersson's other installments in his trilogy about being human, which concludes with this film, but I'm aching to. Imagine floating in the gray space halfway between Lars von Trier and Gary Larson. Same fascination with human misery, same blank expressions atop rotund bodies, same deadpan sense of humor mixed with blasé absurdism, mixed with some utterly shocking scenes of absurd cruelty. It's a series of Far Side strips, wide tableaus of languidly paced non sequiturs. Strange, drab, heartbreakingly ridiculous. I am becoming a late Roy Andersson fan. But if you're watching this video for recommendations, I'm guessing you want something a little more fun, like, It's fun! Check it out! Again. I don't know much to say about it. Space! Carrie Fisher! Cute robots, hey, segue! Alicia Vikander as Ava is one of my favorite characters from 2015. Her presence, both physical and symbolic, make this movie work wonders. Slick, striking design, the best performances by Oscar Isaac and Domhnall Gleeson you'll see all year. Sorry, Star Wars. But the best trick up its wire mesh sleeve is a narrative one. Unfortunately, it's one that I can't give away without spoiling the ending, but it ties back to the Turing test, fittingly. The movie doesn't have much to say about AI, but it has plenty to say, intentionally or not, about patriarchal systems. Ex Machina's real Turing test is hiding in plain sight. At what point do you see the machines as human? Better yet, at what point do you realize the machines are more human than the humans? Even better, at what point do you realize that the machines, figuratively if not literally, were always human? Well-trod sci-fi ground, sure, but such a beautiful execution. Speaking of well-trod sci-fi ground, pop culture's weird because I was never a Mad Max fan, never expected to be a Mad Max fan, and yet this blew me and most everyone else in the world away. George Miller's embrace of practical effects enhanced by CGI reminded us of how action films could look. At the same time, it showed us how action can evolve in the 21st century by embracing women. But its most impressive feat is how cinematic it is, and tells volumes through sparse dialogue, quick gesture, and complex imagery. Just her costuming, her actions, her very presence made Imperator Furiosa one of the best characters to come out of this year. There's so much work going on in each frame to build Max's world of fire and blood. And yet, your pulse never stops racing. A Japanese businesswoman becomes obsessed with a VHS copy of Fargo. She flies to Minnesota to look for the suitcase buried by Steve Buscemi's character and get the treasure inside. No one manages to convince her that it's not actually based on a true story. Rinko Kikuchi as Kumiko was one of my other favorite characters this year. Bold but innocent, determined but deluded, deeply out of her depth in one of the friendliest places on Earth. But the most interesting thing about this is how the film treats the quest, by legitimizing the need for fantasy, while reminding us how dangerous they can be. I sincerely hope the Coen brothers take the compliment. Though for my absolute favorite character, I'd have to say... Is it cheating to have my favorite character be the setting of the movie itself? Riley from Inside Out is my favorite character. I never thought this movie could work. There's something so doofy about the premise that made me think it could all collapse under the weight of its own candy-colored absurdity. Of course, like most moviegoers, I'd forgotten how smart Pixar can be. And thankfully, this movie is remarkably emotionally intelligent, showing an understanding of depression and denial and trauma that most adults can't even grasp. And yet, Pete Docter explained them to children. He made a fable about no less profound a concept as the beginning of wisdom. Pixar reminded the world why they're still at the peak of modern animation. Unless you count stick figures, of course. Don Hertzfeldt managed to make a fascinating career out of drawing the stick figure. He never expanded beyond the simplest depiction of the human form, but he never needed to. He understands the power of their universality, and his best visual ideas aren't about the people, but the environments they're placed in. And who needs to draw a human when your understanding of humanity is so vast and nuanced? And this 17-minute short is one of his best. It's one of the funniest and most poignant works of animation I've seen all year. Maybe even more so than this one, despite all the praise it's been getting. Strip it down to story, and Anomalisa is the purest expression of Charlie Kaufman's ethos that Charlie Kaufman ever wrote. A melancholy man falls hard for a special woman, but it brings him no joy. Everything about the film feels deceptively simple. Its constructed interiors feel realistically banal, its human figures skitter just on the edge of the uncanny valley. For a good portion of the film, you might wonder just why this is stop-motion animated at all. How easy it could have been to shoot with actors in a real hotel. But like the director's other work, it's actually essential to understanding the film. Kaufman understands a good metaphor. By conveying his story through this medium, he speaks to the unspoken, shows things so painfully human that no human could possibly portray them. A perfect marriage between medium and message. So, those are my 20. What an incredible, daring year for movies. Bring on 2016.